So if you've hung around my Instagram or on my YouTube here, you've heard me say that edge control is weed control. And today I am going to show you how I do my best to control the edges of my garden. And it is probably my least favorite part of the garden, is controlling those edges. So I'm gonna show you one of the worst edges of my garden, and then I'm going to show you an after photo of when I've taken care of the edges like I should. And a couple weeks ago on a video, I said that I rarely, if ever, water my garden, and my brother and my sister and my brother-in-law all counseled me on that and said you really need to water your strawberries. If you were not happy with your strawberry harvest, you need to be watering them throughout the summer so that they don't just sit there, because you want them to thrive. So I'm going to show you the edge of my strawberry bed that really needs the edge control, and also telling you that I am watering my strawberries just like they told me to. So here along the edge of my strawberries, you can really see what happens if you don't have edge control. Those weeds just take over. They just creep in from the yard. Now, if you're treating your yard, so if you were treating your yard with herbicides and there would be no weeds in your grass, you wouldn't have quite as much of a problem as I do, because it's the weeds that creep from the grass into your garden. The yard grass does a little bit, but it doesn't create near the pressure that the weeds do that are in your grass, like the creeping Charlie and that broadleaf grass. It really puts pressure on your edges. But we don't put herbicides on our yard because we use the clippings on our garden for weed control and weed barrier. So that is one of the things that I have to do, is I have to work really hard on my edges to keep those weeds from creeping in. So the two tools that I'm going to use is this little dandelion digger right here, and I'll drop a link in the description, and a trusty shovel. Now you can get fancier shovels that are, not dished here, but this is my favorite, and I've just always used it this way and haven't upgraded to a fancy edging shovel. So the first thing I'm going to do is use my little dandelion digger and dig out any weeds that are growing in the strawberry patch close to the edge. So I'm just gonna keep pulling back these weeds here so I can see where my natural edge is. I had a pretty nice edge here last summer, so it's fairly easy for me to see where the grass stops or where the yard stops and the weeds begin. So the next thing I'm going to do is use my shovel and dig down right at the edge of the yard. And what I'm doing is creating a nice little trench here. And this trench is for the lawnmower wheel to ride in. And when the lawnmower wheel rides in that trench, it keeps the weeds cut really short, and that keeps them from taking over. If while you're digging you find some roots or weeds, if you pull them out, you're going to be a step ahead because they won't take a hold again. So one of the biggest threats with the edges of my garden is this wiregrass or crabgrass or whatever you want to call it. But if you know what I'm talking about, you know. And it's these white roots, and they're razor sharp at the end. And this is going to go through any weed barrier, even the cloth type of weed barriers. These roots are going to go through. And the problem with this is if you don't dig it out, you're not going to get rid of it, because anywhere where you break this root under the ground, it's it's just gonna send out 10 more of these sharp little roots. If you till through it, you're really just multiplying the problem. So that's where, this is my favorite little tool. And I just dig down and you can feel them come loose. You gotta get down all the way under and dig them out. But I'm always so happy when I see the end of the root, because that means I didn't break it. This is what you're looking for. You're looking to dig out these sharp little roots. So after I've made my little ditch and made my edge, I use my garden rake and I break up those chunks of soil and rake them out nice and even up into the garden, making sure to keep that ditch or trench nice and clean. So one of the things you could do is you could run a string and be sure to get a very, very straight edge. I've seen folks do that. You can see somewhere out there I'm a little crooked, so I'm just gonna take my shovel and fix that, and then we're ready to use my string trimmer and trim it up. Make sure to pick out any grass roots or weeds that might start growing again. All right, there we go. That edge is all done, and I'm going to move over here to this edge. So here's another example of how I use my string trimmer to keep up with an edge. So here's an example of how the lawnmower wheel rides right in that little trench and cuts the grass and any weeds really short. And here is an example of mowing without that little trench for the wheel to ride in. So if I make a good ditch for my lawnmower wheel to ride in and for my string trimmer for the string to go into, I usually only have to string trim about every 6 weeks. All depends on how much it rains too, but I rarely have to make a ditch more than once a year. If I make that ditch once a year, my string trimmer and my lawnmower do the rest of the work. So before I forget, and I know you're all gonna ask, this is my favorite little string trimmer. It runs off of 2 rechargeable batteries, and when I trim edges, I hold it upside down, and the string goes around up and down instead of sideways. And I will link the model that we have, and who knows, maybe Makita will see it and sponsor me. You just never know.
you want to use